the rabbit hole goes deep. It's tweaking colors, it's tweaking assets, it's making sure everything lines up correctly. There's a million little things.
The NFTs wouldn't become a reality without some procedural awesomeness, and that's the only way that I can explain it because I am not tech art, but I have the technical art lead, Jóhann Reynisson. Can we start off just by getting a little introduction? Who's Jói?
Who's Jói? Well, Jói is someone who's been doing this for well over 20 years now. Well, that's computer graphics in one form or another, and that's been so long that it was barely a thing back then. But yeah, so started out in 98 actually, working in the television and then eventual film industry, doing computer graphics. But that eventually led to a job in the games industry and one quick stop at Lazytown doing television production there before fully joining the computer games industry since 2007. The job being quite technical, it kind of evolved slowly into a technical position, technical artist, and now technical lead at Directive Games, leading a team of veterans and fresh young talent alike.
Jóhann, we have a very strong procedural workflow for Civitas. Can you explain that to us a bit?
Well, at the short of it, we are attempting to utilize the least amount of assets for as much variety and visual fidelity as possible. Our main goal is, of course, striving to execute the vision of the art director and the art direction of the game, get as close to that as possible, but of course, as efficiently and as cheap as possible, so to speak. So Houdini, the software we're using, people might have heard about it. It's such a versatile tool. You can literally, if you can think of it, you can probably do it in Houdini. So we've been utilizing the kind of points system. So essentially, even if it's a water simulation or whatever it is, it's essentially a whole bunch of points with certain behaviors. So we're creating a lot of rules, and essentially it's about assembling buildings and characters from the least amount of assets as possible, but we still want to remain in full control, both in Houdini and in Unreal Engine, to have control over the visual fidelity and variation.
We're bringing a lot of new things to the market here. What's your take on that?
Modular characters in the way we're building, or even modular buildings. These are things that have been done before, but bringing it all together in the way that we're doing it. And for example, with the art direction, you can imagine Ásgeir having the challenge of, it needs to be everything. It needs to be cyberpunk. It needs to be ancient cultures. It needs to be a futuristic building. It needs to be a grass hut or straw hut. So having that challenge and unifying that, it's essentially about what we're assembling and in the way that we're assembling it, and building it in Web3 just makes it all the more exciting.
The style of this game is quite unique.
Well, I worked with Ásgeir before on EVE Online, so that's a dark and gritty world with spaceships, over to this, a very colorful, highly stylized art style, and translating that from a 2D concept art into a highly stylized 3D asset that still retains that 2D feel has been quite the challenge, but it's still also what makes it really fun and exciting to work on.
There's one thing that just keeps popping up in my mind when I'm watching the workflow in here. So I see a 2D straw house being drawn in concept art. Sometime later, I see it as a fully finished 3D object on your computer. How does that happen?
By magic. No,
Houdini.
Yes, Houdini. No, certainly. That's a lot of hard work. So from the concept stage over to having discussions, thankfully I'm having discussions with Ásgeir along the lines of is it feasible? What can we do? Then we have a team of artists that create the asset. We keep it in check technically, moving it over back to the engine, into the stylized look. That's a back and forth, figuring out how to best execute that vision over into 3D, etc. But even when it comes to the characters, there's so many steps along the way. So you have, let's say, just a necklace for one character. it's drawn, it's concepted, it goes into a reference sheet that needs to be handed over to the artist. The artist creates it, keeps in mind that it needs to be animated, then it gets handed back to us and over to the animators. The skeleton needs to be skinned, it needs to be rigged, and then animated. It's quite the process, and that's for one necklace as a part of an assembly of I'm not going to tell you how many assets we're dealing with at the moment.
Quite the process, like Jóhann says there. Now, I witnessed firsthand myself the pipeline in here, the way that things move from the concept art team over to the technical art team, and the pipeline has shown me that there's just such a deep, there's just so much work that's going into each of these NFTs. Have you seen a project utilize it this way?
Can't say I've seen that done before, and the rabbit hole goes deep. Once you start, it's tweaking colors, it's tweaking assets, it's making sure everything lines up correctly. There's a million little things that have to go right, but we're working very hard to make it all happen.